Hey, so welcome to my channel. I'm Angela. Today I want to talk about autoimmune disorders. So I just found out that I have an autoimmune disorder. I don't have a formal diagnosis, although with my symptoms and my test results, it's looking like it's some type of lupus. But today I want to talk about the symptoms that I've had for many years, and many of them were overlooked by doctors. And I was like medically gaslit and just, they really made me feel like I was crazy with these symptoms. But I think people need to be aware of these symptoms, the early symptoms of an autoimmune disorder before it gets bad, because this started for me in my late teens. I'm in my mid 40s now. And the only reason I'm really being taken seriously now is because they've gotten worse. Everything has gotten worse. And it's like now I'm finally being taken serious. And I wish in my younger years I would have advocated for myself. I wish I would have known more about the symptoms. I just wish I would have known to really get a second opinion or a third opinion or whatever. And I feel like it's good information to have out there. It's good information for people to know. That way, if something happens and you're having these weird symptoms, you don't overlook them. Okay, so I have my list on my computer right here. So if you see me looking down, I'm looking at my list because I don't want to forget anything. All of these symptoms are really important and I don't want to forget to talk about anything. So the first thing I want to talk about is the redness on my cheeks, which you can see it a little bit now. It gets worse when I'm having a flare. When I'm having a flare, it will like go up like this and kind of go up my nose a little bit. It never goes across the bridge of my nose, but it does go up. Like right now is like the normal, what it looks like normally. I'll try to find a picture and insert it if I have one of a flare where it's like more prominent. But the redness on your cheeks, it could be rosacea. If you think it's rosacea, go to a dermatologist. They'll be able to let you know. Mine was never rosacea, and I was told that it was not rosacea. And then anytime I wouldn't feel good, like I could feel, it almost felt like, you know how you get embarrassed and your cheeks get really hot and flush? That's what it felt like. It felt like it was hot and it felt like it was going all the way around here. But when you touched it, it was not hot. But it just felt hot to me on the inside. And now when I have a flare, it's very obvious. Like when I was younger, my redness would get bigger, but not like it does now. Like now, like it just like, all my friends know when I'm not feeling well because they can look at my face. Like that's how bad it is. And that's like one of the telltale signs for lupus is the butterfly rash. And if you have this rash, like I would suggest that you take pictures. If you don't feel good, take pictures for your doctor, because you can tell your doctor that you have, this rash, this redness. And if it's not there when you go, what's to prove that you did? Like I had so many doctors that just really just didn't listen to me for many, many years, for over 20 years. So I now take pictures, I document everything. And so the butterfly rash can be just like mine, where it's just red. And some people have it where it's not red all the time and it's just red when they have a flare. Mine is red all the time and then it gets worse with the flare. Some people actually get a rash. I do not get like a raised rash. Mine stays flush and it just looks like what my grandmother used to call rosy cheeks. That's what it looks like, except for it's bigger. Okay, so now I want to talk about something that happened in my 20s, around my mid 20s, that doctors, I think about things now and I'm like, how did they just not test me for things? But I digress. Some doctors just don't, I don't know. So in my mid-20s, in the evenings, I would have a low-grade fever. it would be like 99, 100, very low grade. It would last for like a month or so, and it would only be in the evening. Never in the morning, never during the day, only in the evening. And after about a month, it would go away, and it would be gone for a little while, and then it would come back. And it would just be these random fevers for no reason. And I remember going to the doctor and got tested for all what I thought was all the things. Apparently it was not all the things, because I was never tested for any kind of autoimmune issues. I was just tested for like infections and being sick and all that stuff. And they were like, all of your test results come back fine. Nothing's wrong with you. We don't know what's going on. And they basically ended it right there. Like, that was one of the times when I really wish I would have advocated for myself and gone to a different doctor. But I was in my 20s and I honestly didn't know, and I had no idea about autoimmune issues. So I didn't know, and I just trusted my doctor. But if you're having any kind of weird fevers, even if it pops up at random times during the day and then goes away, make sure you talk to your doctor. And if they don't mention an autoimmune panel, like getting an ANA test or anything like that, ask for it. Specifically ask for it. Okay, now let's talk about sun exposure. So as you can see, I am pale. Like I am pale. So I burn easy. So that was always a thing growing up. I always wore sunscreen, all that kind of stuff. In my late 20s, things changed when it came to sun exposure. I would, like if I went to the beach and I was in direct sun, now this only happens in direct sun. I'm okay as long as I have shade. But if I'm in direct sun for too long, that's when these symptoms come up. So starting in my late 20s, I was about 28, 29, I started getting sick after being outside for too long. And when I say sick, like extreme fatigue, body aches, and it would last for a day or two. It almost felt like a hangover. That's what it felt like. It felt like a hangover. And it would last for a day or two, and then I was fine. So skip to my mid to late 30s. I still would get sick after sun exposure, but then I started getting splotches. So instead of like a sunburn, because I always wore sunscreen, I would get, especially on my arms, it was very prominent, it would be these big splotches all over my arms. They were never raised. They were never itchy, nothing like that, but I would get these splotches and it almost looked like hives, but they weren't raised and they weren't itchy. And then I would get the other symptoms. And then the sickness that I would get after being in the sun got worse. Like now, 30 minutes is my max in the sun. 30 minutes. And I'm going to get splotchy. I'm going to have body aches, like flu-like body aches. That's what it feels like. It feels like the flu. Body aches, a headache. I'll get a headache. I'll get a migraine. I will sometimes get joint pain now. And that's how the sun exposure part of this has escalated. And it's like, so over 15 years, it's escalated to the point where now if I'm in the sun for too long, I am literally sick, like sick for almost a week after. And sometimes I can barely walk because my ankles hurt, because my joints hurt. And come to find out, with autoimmune disorders, sun exposure is one of the big triggers, and sun exposure can actually make everything else worse. So if you have issues where the sun makes you sick, bring it up to your doctor, ask about autoimmune panel, ask about autoimmune testing, and see if there's something more going on. This next one's kind of a weird one. I never knew this had anything to do with an autoimmune issue. And I feel like I've always been like this. Like, I can't remember a time when I wasn't like this, but I cannot drink just water. Like, if I drink just water, I feel dehydrated. Um, and that sounds really weird. I know, it sounds really weird because I have these big jugs right here, and I try to drink 3 of these a day. But one of them has to have electrolytes in it because I can't drink just water. Like, and that makes like no sense to me. It makes no sense to me at all. And I don't know why it's a thing, but that is something that I go through, and I have to keep the electrolyte packets in the house all the time because I have to have electrolytes every single day. Water will make me dehydrated. I don't know, it sounds so weird to say, but that is actually a thing with autoimmune disorders. Okay, one more big thing that I want to talk about, and then I'll talk about some of the other smaller kind of symptoms that I have. But the other big thing that I have seen change over the years is my fatigue. In my 20s, I had 2 little kids, and anytime I got tired, I was just like, oh, I'm a mom, I'm working, I'm just tired. That's just it. But as I got older, that fatigue turned into just being tired to being exhausted. It turned into being so exhausted that I would sit down and fall asleep. Like, so exhausted that now if I feel like I'm in a flare and I feel that fatigue, I won't drive because I can't drive because I will probably fall asleep. Like, that's how bad it is. So when I say fatigue, I mean extreme fatigue. And it didn't used to be like that. It has progressed from being just, just a little tired that could be, stress or kids or, whatever, to being exhausted. And I will wake up exhausted when I'm in a flare. Like, I'll sleep. I'll sleep like 10, 12 hours straight and still be exhausted. Take naps. I will, and it's just, I guess it's just my body, fighting with itself inside. I don't know what it is, but the exhaustion, the fatigue is horrible. It makes it hard to work sometimes. It makes it hard to literally do anything. But it has gotten just really bad. Really, really bad. So if you're struggling with fatigue, it could be stress. It could be a lot of other things. But if it seems to be getting worse, bring it up to your doctor. Don't think, you're just stressed out. You get too much on your plate, whatever. If your fatigue is getting worse and worse and worse, please bring it up to your doctor. Okay, so now to some newer symptoms that I'm having that have started in the last few months. That can be attributed to the autoimmune disorder. So the first thing is joint pain. My elbow hurts almost all the time now. Apparently there's no reason for my elbow to hurt because I've been to an orthopedic doctor. I've been to doctors and they're like, there's no reason. So they're pretty much saying that it's attributed to the autoimmune disorder. And then not only my elbow, but my wrist will hurt and my ankles will hurt when I'm in a flare. So if I wake up in the morning and I go to stand up and my ankles are extremely stiff and they hurt, I know that I am probably going to need to take it easy that day. I know that I'm probably going to feel like absolute crap that day, because that's one of my signs that I'm in a flare. Now, when I'm not in a flare, or I'm not in a full-blown flare, my ankles are fine. They're perfectly fine. They don't hurt. But when I'm in a flare, sometimes they hurt so bad it's hard to walk, which is horrible. Like, I've never, until the last few months, I've never experienced anything like that, and it is absolutely horrible. So joint pain is another symptom that I am having of the autoimmune disorder. And then another thing that has come up, and this has come up more in tests because they have run a lot of tests on me, is I have something going on with my kidneys. They are not entirely sure what it is yet. It is not a bacterial infection. It is not a virus. It is like nothing like that. It's maybe inflammation. I don't know. I'm waiting to kind of hear what's going on with that, but I do have red blood cells in my urine, and they're, because there's no infection, there's no other reason for that. And I don't feel anything. I had no idea that was even going on until, I had to do all the tests, and it came back, and I was like, what? Why does this look like this? I do not have protein in my urine. So a lot of people that have lupus or other autoimmune disorders will have protein in theirs. I don't have protein, but I do have red blood cells. And the red blood cells seem to be, every time I get tested, it's more and more and more. And they're trying to figure out what's going on with that. So that's another thing that I have going on right now that is attributed to the autoimmune. And I think those are my biggest things. Like every once in a while, I'll come across something new and I'm like, what is this? And then I will Google it and I'll be like, really? Is it really one of the symptoms? So it's like, the one thing I've learned is that autoimmune disorders have a lot of symptoms. And if you take the symptoms individually, it can be attributed to a lot of different things. But if you combine them, like if you're having all of these different symptoms within the same time period, that's when it's really time to really advocate for yourself and ask your doctor for the autoimmune testing. And that's exactly what I did, because I was having all these symptoms, and I called one of my friends one day and my face was just red. And she said, do you have lupus? And I said, I don't know. And she was like, you should call your doctor. And so I did, and I made an appointment, and I told my doctor what was going on. And I said, listen, I'm going to ask you for specific testing because I've had a lot of these symptoms before. They're getting worse. Doctors did not do the right testing. I said, I want to be tested for autoimmune issues. I want to know if I have an autoimmune issue. And she validated my concerns and started ordering the testings. Well, the first round of tests came back. My ANA was abnormal with a high titer, I think that's what it's called. And then the red blood cells in my urine, and then they ordered more tests and more tests and more tests. And I have an appointment with a rheumatologist, but it's a ways out because they're backed up. So I will get a formal diagnosis from the rheumatologist whenever I get in, and my doctor is actually monitoring me until that time. So if you have a group of symptoms that are just, may seem random, but they're really not random because they're all happening at the same time, please advocate for yourself and ask for specific testing. That's where I really messed up when I was younger. I didn't know to ask for specific testing. Ask for autoimmune testing. And even if it comes back everything normal, at least that will rule it out. And you can move on to something else. But ask for the specific testing and definitely advocate for yourself.